Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. Thomas's dark side is back. He killed Paris, and now he's about to kill Brooke. Is Brooke in danger when Thomas targets her? The conspiracy of the Logan family against Taylor Hayes. To be fair, Taylor Hayes is the target of a conspiracy by the Logans. This includes Eric Forrester, who is currently an honorary Logan, Donna Logan, and Katie Logan. When you stop to think about it, doesn't Taylor deserve someone to stand up for her, just like Donna, Katie, and Eric do for Brooke? When you look at it that way, you realize that there is a reason to bring Thomas back, especially now that Steffi Forrester is gone and Ridge Forrester is still wasting everyone's time by vacillating between these two women. The personal challenges of Thomas Forrester and his reunion with Taylor. Since Thomas returned to Los Angeles, we have learned more about his personal life. To be honest, it's not surprising that his first destination was to visit his mother, Taylor, in her hospital office. He also required some consolation. She had a pleasant little reunion with Thomas. When they finally got together, Taylor informed Thomas that Brooke was getting in the way of her engagement to Ridge. However, because Ridge is the largest contributor to the issue, Thomas is still unaware of its entire scope. At least not yet. Taylor is also unaware of that. The Logans, Ridge, and Brooke are all aware. Brave and gorgeous, Thomas faces Ridge following a startling finding. Thomas planned to visit his father at Forrester Creations as his next destination. As far as he is aware, his parents are blissfully engaged, thus it makes sense that Thomas was upset when he saw Brooke in Ridge's arms. He then enters the room after what appears to be some infidelity. Thomas questioned his father, Ridge Forrester, directly if Taylor's wedding was still planned. "The entire family is depending on you, so don't break Taylor's heart again," Thomas advised Ridge. What's crazy about that is that Ridge essentially told Thomas that everything would be alright and that he wouldn't cause any problems. It has already occurred. The reasons behind Thomas Forrester's fixation on Ridge and Taylor's marriage. We learned more about Thomas's motivation for returning to Los Angeles when he explained to his father why he so desperately needs Ridge and Taylor's marriage to bring him closure or oneness. This is partly because Thomas and Paris Buckingham are no longer engaged. Thomas claimed that he and Paris had broken up and that her entire family is problems. He is correct, particularly in light of the terrible scam that her mother, Grace Buckingham, played on Liam and Bill Spencer. Furthermore, it is unquestionably true that Thomas and Steffi witnessed Ridge harm Taylor for years. They don't want that for their mother, they don't like it. In an attempt to stop Brooke, Thomas explained to Ridge that his return is solely to prevent Brooke from getting her hooks into Ridge and causing him to harm Taylor once more. Thomas added that he simply doesn't know what his life is now or what his purpose is after the breakup with Paris. He expresses his sense of untetheredness to Ridge. In addition to not working on a fashion line for Bold and the Beautiful, he is single. And since he is now that age, his son Douglas Forrester is occupied with his pals. Unfortunately for Ridge, Taylor's happiness consumes Thomas's attention. After Taylor recovered from the previous crisis, which, as we all know, was broken heart syndrome, Thomas advised Ridge that he had better not crush her feelings once again. Taking on Brooke Logan. Naturally, Ridge is concerned since Thomas is determined to ensure that Ridge and Taylor get married and that Brooke doesn't stand in their way. Thomas rushed to confront Brooke after spotting Ridge in her grasp at the workplace. From Thomas's point of view, his parents' happy engagement does, in my opinion, justify what he is doing. To the best of his knowledge, Ridge did not refute it, and he observed them in what appeared to be an infidelity scenario. As Katie sat there in disbelief, Thomas said to Brooke, "Ridge is getting married to Taylor, and Brooke had better not try to get in the way of them ever again." Katie was taken aback. After her mouth fell open, Brooke glared. It certainly sounded like Dark Thomas, the man we've seen before. But again, consider his point of view. Consider what he is witnessing. Brooke is viewing this from the perspective that, as a result of what transpired there, she and Ridge are essentially already back together. However, that isn't the case for Taylor, and it's not the case for Thomas, who is currently hesitating for Ridge. Does Brooke Logan face Peril? Thomas's plans revealed. The key query is whether Brooke should be worried about what her ex-stepson would do to keep Ridge with Taylor and prevent their marriage from happening. Can Brooke have faith that Ridge won't overlook what transpired with them in Italy and sulk back to Taylor? I'm not sure if Brooke can put her trust in him. Thomas seems to be planning and scheming to prevent Brooke from separating his parents. Bold and the Beautiful, the hypocrisy of Eric Forrester in counseling Ridge on Thomas. Ridge later told Eric that Thomas had pressured him to wed Taylor. Don't let Thomas tell you what to do, Eric advised. Eric was urging Ridge, don't let Thomas tell you what to do, which was a major irony. Allow me to instruct you. It's the same thing you're doing, Ridge said to his father after realizing that. However, Eric believes he knows what's best for Ridge, therefore he believes it's acceptable when he does it. The dark side of Thomas Forrester, a danger to Brooke Logan. I suppose Thomas will find his purpose now that he's out here, protecting his mother from Brooke's attempt to take her guy. However, Thomas's behavior has been suspicious since he arrived back in Los Angeles, raising a red flag. Lee Finnegan was informed by Taylor that Thomas had returned and was doing well. They discussed his previous problems, and Taylor promised to support Thomas in the event that he had a setback, even though she would hate for him to experience one. Therefore, B&B may have been warning us that if Thomas discovers that Ridge did, in fact, tell Brooke that he would abandon Taylor and start over with her, he would lose the plot and go crazy. Is Thomas going to lose it? Thomas pursuing Brooke to ensure that she poses no threat to Taylor and Ridge's happiness is something I can totally understand. I'm not saying that Thomas will hurt Brooke physically, of course. His habit of physically harming her is not consistent with his behavior. Never say never, but he hasn't acted in that way before. Thomas most certainly does something to harm Brooke's reputation with Ridge, in my opinion. On Bold and the Beautiful, it wouldn't be the first time. He discredited Brooke by giving Ridge the impression that he and she had slept together years before. Naturally, Thomas framed Brooke for the CBS call he phoned using Douglas Voice app more recently. Thomas can be dark, cruel, and spiteful, as we all know. With Hope Logan occupied with 2 other men and Paris no longer in his life, Thomas has plenty of energy to concentrate on ensuring Brooke doesn't interfere. Brave and lovely, Brooke's danger, Thomas and Steffi's coalition against her. To be clear, Brooke should be quite concerned about Thomas. Brooke should be concerned that Thomas would influence Ridge and pressure him to stay with Taylor, in addition to the possibility that he will specifically target her, as he did with the CBS call. Although I'm sure Brooke is aware of how serious this is for him, I'm not sure whether she does. In addition, I can see Thomas and Steffi working together to shield their mother, particularly in the wake of the whole heart syndrome incident. Following Ridge's assurance to Steffi that he would never break Taylor's heart, Steffi will be incensed to learn that Ridge promised Brooke a future after he pulled her out of the water. What Thomas could do to free Brooke from Ridge is the key question. It was intriguing that Thomas lacked the courage to inform his son that he intended to dump Taylor when he confronted Ridge. To be honest, I believe that Thomas's best course of action is to increase Ridge's stress and heap on the guilt. All of that, though, makes me think of the classic Bonnie Raitt song, I Can't Make You Love Me. I can't make you love me if you don't, that sentence. No one, not even Thomas, can make it happen if Ridge doesn't love Taylor as much as he loves Brooke. He'll try, though, I'm willing to wager. Eric and Thomas's argument, Ridge's 180, and Katie's backing. Thomas Forrester and Eric Forrester will argue. Brooke Logan is supported by Katie Logan. In addition, Ridge Forrester informs Taylor Hayes that he is unable to wed her. The assistance of Katie Logan. Katie threatens to put the phone in timeout while Brooke looks at it. Why hasn't Ridge replied to her text? Is he with Taylor, according to Katie? She shouldn't worry about anything, according to Katie. Thomas is causing Brooke concern. Despite her disapproval, the blonde asserts that Thomas has the right to express his viewpoint. Thomas's past is brought up by Katie. Brooke acknowledges that he had a difficult past. Thomas is Ridge's son, and the blonde has feelings for him. She desires Thomas's happiness. Thomas will attempt to persuade Ridge to wed Taylor, according to Katie. Nothing, according to the blonde, can take back the memories of that day in Italy. Ridge assured her that he would put things right, she must have faith in him. The debate of Eric Forrester. Thomas interrupts Eric, who is sketching. They give each other hugs and are overjoyed to see one another. The Tridge wedding excites Thomas. Eric appears unhappy. About Europe, the patriarch inquires. Paris Buckingham is gone, and Douglas Forrester is behind the wheel. Hearing that surprises Eric. According to the patriarch, Taylor is a successful woman who is content without Ridge's approval. Though he mentions the broken heart syndrome, Thomas concurs. Eric is aware that Taylor supported Ridge throughout the takeover. According to Thomas, the only person who can obstruct Tridge is Brooke. They argue over Taylor and Brooke. Thomas can feel the love that Tridge has for one another, even if he is aware that his grandfather is a huge Brooke fan. The partnership is steady. Support Taylor and Ridge's marriage, please. According to Eric, Ridge is aware of his emotions. Despite his persistent efforts, Thomas is unable to convince him to join Team Tridge. Forrester Ridge's rejection. Taylor and Ridge are conversing. The man approves of the therapist's renovations. It's a unique setting for a unique event. Taylor is trying to decide on a wedding date. Ridge is haunted by Eric's remarks as they embrace. They discuss Grace Buckingham's conduct against Liam Spencer and Thomas's return home. According to Taylor, it's best. She shifts the conversation to their impending marriage. Reuniting their family is what Thomas and Steffi Forrester Finnegan both need. Taylor talks endlessly. Ridge rarely speaks, but occasionally he smiles and speaks a few words. Why don't they tie the knot tomorrow? Ridge begins to pace the space. He keeps seeing flashbacks to Brooke's near-death experience and Eric's statements. Ridge pushes her away abruptly. He adores Taylor and all of her qualities. He hopes to never cause her pain or break her heart. After a protracted silence, Ridge states that he is unable to choose a wedding date. He is unable to wed Taylor. Thomas moved, not as a man, but as an extension of the shadows themselves, his footsteps making no sound, his breathing a shallow, controlled rhythm that was utterly, terrifyingly calm. This was not the Thomas of charming smiles and carefully constructed apologies, the man who could weave a tapestry of regret so convincing it almost felt like truth. That man had been a cage, a complex prison of societal expectation and feigned normalcy built to contain the thing that now walked free. That cage had been rattled, its bars strained, by Paris's righteous anger, by her piercing accusations that held up a mirror to the monster he kept hidden. And in one shattering instant, the mirror had cracked, and the monster had stepped through. Paris was gone. The memory of it was not a blur of violence in his mind, but a collection of perfect, crystalline details, the shocking finality in her widening eyes, not of fear at first, but of sheer, disbelieving betrayal, the way the light had guttered out in them like a snuffed candle, the terrible, profound silence that followed the act, a silence more deafening than any scream. He had felt no rage in that moment, no hot, blinding fury. There was only a cool, surgical precision, a sense of rightness, of a problem finally, and permanently, solved. And as he wiped his hands clean, a fastidious gesture that was more habit than necessity, a new compulsion took root, a logical, inexorable next step on this path he had chosen. Brooke knew. Brooke had always seen glimpses, had danced on the periphery of his darkness, her intuition a flickering alarm she had too often talked herself into ignoring. But now, with Paris gone, that intuition would scream. She would be the loose thread that, when pulled, would unravel the entire carefully constructed fiction of his life. And so he found himself here, in the weeping night, drawn to the warm, honeyed light spilling from the bay window of her ground-floor apartment like a moth to a flame, but he was no moth, he was the bat that preys upon those drawn to the light. He watched her from the shadows, a predator studying his quarry through the rain-beaded glass. She was moving about her living room, unaware of the audience in the dark, a picture of domestic tranquility that was both beautiful and pathetic in its fragility. She was curling her hair, of all things, humming along to some soft music playing from her phone, a ritual of normalcy performed on the edge of an abyss she couldn't see. He watched the gentle curve of her neck as she tilted her head, the way she bit her lip in concentration, and he felt nothing akin to desire, only a distant, analytical appreciation for the mechanics of what he was about to do. This was necessity. This was tidying up. The back door to her garden apartment was, as he knew it would be, unlocked, a testament to her trusting nature, a flaw he had once found endearing and now found convenient. The handle turned with a silent, well-oiled click under his gloved hand, and he slipped inside, a sliver of the night invading her warm, scented space. The change in atmosphere was immediate. The air in her home was thick with the cloying sweetness of vanilla candle and the damp warmth of a dryer running in the next room. It was the air of a life being lived, a stark, almost offensive contrast to the void he carried within him. He stood in her kitchen, just beyond the pool of light from the living room, and simply waited for her to feel him. It took a moment. The music covered the sound of his entry, but it could not mask the pressure of his presence, the sudden, glacial drop in temperature that had nothing to do with the draft from the open door. Brooke's humming faltered. She paused, the curling iron hovering in midair, and a faint line appeared between her brows. She turned, not toward the kitchen directly, but as if sensing a shift in the equilibrium of her world. "Hello," she called out, her voice tentatively cheerful. "Paris? Is that you? Did you forget your key again?" The name, spoken so innocently in that space, should have been a lance to his heart. Instead, it was merely a confirmation of his purpose. He took a single, silent step forward, allowing the light from the living room to catch the toe of his shoe. Her eyes tracked the movement, and her smile, which had begun to form, froze and then died on her lips. Her gaze traveled up, slowly, taking in the dark trousers, the still damp coat, and finally, his face. What she saw there extinguished the last of the light in her own eyes. It wasn't anger or menace, it was a profound, absolute emptiness, a flat calm that was more horrifying than any snarled threat. This was the void looking back at her. "Thomas?" The word was a breath, a plea for the world to make sense again. "What are you doing here? What's wrong? You're scaring me." He didn't answer. He simply continued to look at her, and in that look, she saw everything. She saw the absence of the man she thought she loved. She saw the meticulous calculation. Her eyes flickered past him, to the dark, open back door, to the rain still falling outside, and then back to his utterly still hands. The curling iron slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the wooden floor with a sound like a gunshot in the tense silence. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered, the words trembling. "Thomas, where's Paris?" He took another step into the room, and she mirrored it with a step back, her body moving on an instinct of self-preservation he knew was futile. The distance between them was closing, the space shrinking from a room to a cage. She had to be quiet, Thomas said, and his voice was the most terrifying thing of all. It was calm, measured, almost gentle, but it carried the tonal quality of a stone dropped into a deep, bottomless well. She wouldn't stop talking, Brooke. She wouldn't stop pushing. She thought she could fix things. She thought she could fix me. Brooke's back hit the edge of her bookshelf, halting her retreat. Tears welled in her eyes, not yet of grief, but of pure, undiluted terror. She was realizing, in real time, that the man standing before her was not a man capable of being reasoned with, pleaded with, or reminded of love. He was a force of nature, a destructive algorithm following its course. "What did you do?" she choked out, her body beginning to shake uncontrollably. "I solved the problem," he stated, as if explaining a simple mathematical equation. "And now there's you." He began to move toward her, not with a lunge, but with a slow, inevitable advance, a hunter who knows the prey is cornered. "You see too much. You always have. You look at me and you see the cracks, and you love me in spite of them. But that love, it's a question. It's a doubt. It's a loose end." "No, Thomas, please," she begged, her voice breaking into a sob. She brought her hands up, a futile ward against what was coming. "I love you. I would never tell anyone anything. Please, you have to believe me." He was inches from her now. He could smell her perfume, the scent of her shampoo, the salt of her tears. He reached out, not to strike, but to gently brush a strand of hair from her damp cheek. The touch was intimate, possessive, and utterly soulless. It made her flinch as if burned. "It's not about belief, Brooke," he murmured, his eyes holding hers, trapping her in that bottomless gaze. "It's about certainty. And the only certainty is silence." His other hand rose, and in it, Brooke saw not a weapon, but the simple, horrifying reality of his intent. It was his own strength, the focused, brutal application of will through flesh and bone. This was it. This was the moment the last light in her world was about to be extinguished, not by a stranger in an alley, but by the man whose face she had kissed, whose lies she had cherished, whose darkness she had mistaken for depth. Thomas's dark side wasn't back, it had merely been waiting, patient and absolute, for its moment to conclude its grim and final work.